Hey there, and welcome to the People Who Help People podcast. This is the spot for HR and people ops pros who are all about building better businesses by putting people first. We chat with founders and experts who've been there, done that, and are generous enough to share what actually works. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello again. Today I'm happy to be speaking with Jenni Catron, founder and CEO at the Foresight Group, about why culture matters. Jenni is a culture strategist, leadership coach, author, and CEO of the Foresight Group, where she and her team help leaders build thriving teams through healthy organizational culture. With years of experience leading at executive levels in corporate, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations, Jenni is passionate about equipping leaders to steward their influence well, because people are the point. Welcome to the podcast, Jenni.
Craig, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Jenni, congratulations on publishing the book. When
Thank
did
you.
it come out, by the way?
Came out in February 2025, so still pretty young.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll get back to that in a second. Jenni, tell me a little bit about how you got started founding the Foresight Group.
Yeah. You know what? Like every journey, it's a little bit unexpected detour. I joke sometimes that if you would have told me that I would be all about people at this stage of my journey, I would not have expected that in my early 20s. I was a pretty ambitious, driven young leader, like most of us are, and I worked in the music business in Nashville, Tennessee. So that was dream job. I thought I would do that for forever. And but what quickly happened is, as I got promoted and had more opportunities and responsibilities, I discovered how significant leadership is and went on a whole journey of understanding what great, healthy leadership looks like. And then I really found the power of teams and how significant it is when a team of people are aligned and working effectively together. And so just over time, that became the greater passion. It was like, it didn't matter the organization I was in. What mattered was how strong the leaders were and how strong the team was. And so just over a couple of decades of that becoming more and more my passion, it just became obvious that being able to do that for many organizations and work with many leaders was the next right step. So honestly, I kind of fell into it, Craig. It was like at the crux of another transition in a role. I thought, you know what, this may be the time to kind of launch out and build my own thing. And my dream job as a little girl was to be a CEO of a record company. So I just put the CEO over on my own endeavor, and here I am.
Got it. So you started out at the record company. You might have learned a thing or two from the leaders that you worked for and the teams you observed, because we learn about leadership, both good and bad, by learning from others. But then you had a couple of, I call them career inflection points. So the first one, you moved out of the music business, and then you went into faith-based organizations. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It was a very unexpected turn in my work experience. But part of what happened, I worked for a record company in Nashville. It was a division of a larger company that at the time was the biggest record company in the world. And it was dream job, like absolutely loved it. Spent 8 years there. And then we went through a corporate merger, and they merged two divisions together. And I'm sure, as you and probably many others know, those mergers are never fun. They're always a bit messy. But what I noticed is that overnight, it felt like overnight, my experience went from amazing to awful. That I went from this great team, great culture, I'm being stretched, I'm growing, the clear goals, great people, not, it was challenging work, but it was really meaningful. And then we went through a merger, and my actual job responsibilities were the same, but my leader and my team changed, and they weren't bad people, but it wasn't a great culture. And I stayed for a year at the request of one of my mentors, who was my former CEO of the previous division. And he said, Jenni, would you give it a year? Just please, let's give it a year. And I stayed out of really respect and loyalty to him. And that was what became the impetus for my transition. I ended up going to work for a nonprofit in Nashville that I had been very involved with. And I remember when I moved there that I was now executive director of this nonprofit that was growing really rapidly. And I thought, I now sit in the seat where I'm responsible for culture. I'm now the one who's has more influence over shaping the experience and the environment. And that was like, whoo, like this is a big deal. So the transition was because of the disruption in my experience, but it also really informed upon me the importance of, now that I'm sitting in an executive seat, how am I handling the responsibility of leadership and how am I building culture? So that probably gave you more than you asked, but that's
That
the
was
bigger
perfect.
story. Yeah.
No, it's perfect. So, first of all, I admire that you committed a year to staying in a
Mm.
what you felt at the time, rightly, what your gut told you was a toxic culture, or not an optimal culture. It's
Yep.
not fair of me to
Yep.
call it toxic. But then, when you did make that transition, you said, "Ooh, now it's my turn." So here's an assignment: what you know today, approximately 15 or so years later, if you were to go back and observe executive director you,
Mm-hmm.
what did you get right about culture, and what
Hmm.
could you have done a little bit better?
That's such a good question. So I would say that what I got right about it in that season was I knew it mattered. I didn't know how to do it. And
Sure.
this is what and I'm sure many of the listeners can relate to this, in that a lot of times the people that we're working with, they kind of intuitively know it matters, but they don't really know how to do it. So I knew it mattered. I knew I needed to be attentive to it. I knew that I wanted to create a place where people were thriving, that we were intentional with their gifts. And we were a nonprofit, so salaries weren't great. We weren't the most competitive thing in the market. So I knew that I had to attract and retain great people, and they needed to be there for more than a paycheck. And then we were a volunteer organization, so we had to
Yeah.
cascade to our volunteers. So I think what I got right, Craig, was that I knew it mattered, and I knew I needed to give time to it, even though there were plenty of things vying for my time and energy. What I got wrong was kind of still leaving it to chance and
Hmm.
kind of going with my gut. And this is one of the things that's grown to be a deep conviction of mine, is that culture, like every other key initiative in your organization, needs a strategy. It needs a plan. You can't just, hope it stays great. And you can't just, assume that proximity is going to produce the right culture. You need to be really intentional with understanding it, defining it. And so I would say what I got wrong is that I didn't put enough time and energy around the definition of what we looked like at our best. That's one of my favorite ways to look at culture, is what do we look like at our best? And I think that I knew it intuitively and instinctively, but I couldn't clarify it for everybody else. And so you had the team members who got it, and then they were positively contributing to culture, and they become the people that you lean into. But then you had the people who didn't intuitively get it, and I probably gave up on them too quickly, because they're like, oh, you're a fit, you're not a fit, you're a fit, you're not a fit. And because I couldn't articulate what we were aiming for as a culture, we had some bumps in the road because of that.
Of course. Sidebar: is culture, establishing a culture in an organization, is that the leader's responsibility, or is it a team sport?
It's both, and it
Okay.
depends a lot on if it's a new organization and the founder leader is highly involved and very directive. They're going to have disproportionate influence, and leaders have disproportionate influence on culture anyway, just because
Sure.
of the level of power and responsibility we have in the organization. So what I find is that in startups, founding organizations, that founder leader carries a lot of the responsibility for shaping culture. But it is a team sport. Everybody's contributing to it. And this was why, when I was talking about what I didn't do so well in that nonprofit, was I, as a leader, didn't put enough language to our culture to help everybody understand and know how to contribute to it. And if I had been clearer as a leader in my ideas, expectations, etc., that would have helped everybody kind of understand our shared goal.
Sure.
But what I find, so I've worked with a number of legacy organizations, 100 plus years old, and you've had several leaders throughout the years. And I was working with one that had gone through a very volatile senior leader transition. And obviously the culture was very toxic, very, super unhealthy. And so when I went in to work with them, we were looking at the legacy and the history of the organization, because they had a new senior leader who had some ideas about the culture, but what he couldn't ignore was all of the history and legacy. Like that
Right.
had to be factored into the equation to help define who they are and who they want to continue to be. So I would say, if you pushed me, I would say it's a team sport. But I think in smaller organizations, that leader carries a significant influence on it.
Yeah. I too have worked in a few of those legacy organizations where it's deeply rooted, and
Yes.
I find it's
And you
best
can't
to
ignore it. You've got to
no,
you got to pay
no,
attention to it, because I
no.
think some leaders come in and they want to just bulldoze it and
Right.
build the new. And it's there.
Yeah.
I think one of the Friedman authors calls it phantom power in an
Mm.
organization, like the
Yep.
phantom power that's in that history, and it's deep in the culture.
Yeah.
And I think you have to honor and acknowledge that. And there are some things that you do want to redirect, and then there's a lot that you need to figure out how to carry forward, because it has been a contributor to what that organization is
Oh yeah.
and does. So
Yeah. I like the words honor that culture. Those were the words that came to mind for me. As
yeah,
long as you honor the legacy
that's right.
and then selectively pick out the best parts of it that help reinforce the culture you're trying to put forward, I think you can bring folks along.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we talked about the early years, music business, little girl's dream. We talked about the pivot to a nonprofit and a higher calling of sorts and a leadership role, and then another career inflection point, and you founded your own company.
Yes.
So as you founded Get Foresight, were you more intentional at that point, or certainly it's been a few years? Is it close to 10 now?
Yeah, it's been 9. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Same question. So, what you know now, if you were coaching you when you were starting, what did you get right? And what do you wish you had paid a little bit more attention to or been more intentional about as you founded your own consulting firm?
That's such a good question. I would say the thing that is and I had a mentor say this to me, that you'll do great for your first 3 years because you'll tap your network, you'll get your word of mouth, you'll hit all of your usual suspects of that circle of influence that you have. And I remember him saying to me, "Jenni, what's your plan after the first 3 years?" And I was like,
Wow.
"I'm just trying to get through the first year,"
Yeah.
because you're like, "Can I make a viable, income out of this?" But his words stick with me, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that that was the question he asked me, because then it was living in the back of my mind. Because I will say this, Craig, the things that have been the most challenging for me are learning the sales and marketing engines of running your own business.
Okay.
Especially because a service-based organization where I have and we needed to build. I would say another key thing is I wish I had built my framework quicker, my proprietary framework. So in my Culture Matters book, I outline the lead culture framework, which is our core framework that we take clients through. And for the first handful of years, I didn't have my own proprietary framework. And I'm not saying everybody has to have their own, but you need to know which one you use, because it may be you get certified in somebody else's framework, and that's actually a really helpful tool, and that's what you use. And I have a few others of those in my tool belt, but I'm a content creator. I've always been a person who creates stuff. And I waited too long to build my own framework that could really help distinguish and identify us as a business. Like this is our proprietary way.
Sure.
So I wish I had done that sooner. And then the other, I alluded to this a minute ago, but the sales and marketing engine of running your own business. What took me, not, I would say by surprise, or it's just been harder to learn than I expected, is when I was in the music business, I was in a big corporate company,
Sure.
big company. Yeah. I had my budget for the area that I was responsible for, and I knew how to manage that, and I knew my sales goals around my specific area of responsibility. But my lead generation was not anything like what you have to do in a small business.
Right.
And then I went into the nonprofit world. Well, then, you're just trying to make your mission really clear and help people understand what you do and why you do it. And if you're doing that well, they're likely giving, and that was my experience. Yes, we have to do fundraisers and all of those things, but very different thing than being a service-based business. And, you tap your network of all your friends and family, and then you go, okay, now what?
Yeah.
So that's probably, and that's still our growth edge, is getting those systems right. And of course, the market has shifted so much, even in the, I feel like I've had two businesses. I had my pre-COVID business and my post-COVID business, because my company kind of straddled that because we're 9 years old. And then even in the last couple of years, the market is different. Market conditions are different. And so I feel like that's always keeping me on my toes. If I'm just honest, that's the stretching point.
Darn it, Jenni, you did it again. You gave me like 5 different questions I want to ask, but I'm going to try to stick to the initial script.
Well, it might be because when you ask a question, I answer 10 different ways.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I want to ask about your pre-COVID and your post-COVID and the difference of the business in the last few years. So let's use that. Talk to me through the 3 periods. Mm-hmm. And what you learned in the first period that took you to the second, what you learned in the second that is now that you're refining in your third period of the last couple of years. And let's stick to the theme of sales and marketing engine, because we all need to figure out, how are we going to get beyond friends and family? How do we get beyond those first 3 years? So what are some of the key learnings, key approaches? You've already given us one, which was nail your framework sooner. Mm-hmm. What else?
Yeah. So my pre-COVID business had a lot more in-person components to it. I did cohorts where I would bring people on site together. And so a big part of my model was built on being in person with people. I was doing a lot on site with clients, and then I was also bringing cohorts together, and had built quite a bit of momentum around that. Very effective, working really well. To the point I alluded to earlier, it was still a lot of working the networks that already existed. So I wasn't doing a lot of new lead generation. I was just mining my existing, database. And then COVID happens. And I remember sitting in this office and going, I've just put my suitcase away and I don't know when I'll pull it out again. And I know so many of you can relate to this. And I sat here and at first I thought my business is done. You have the fear moment. And then I had okay, wait, why do I do what I do? And I had to sit and I had to come back to, I do this work because I believe leaders and teams need to be healthy and strong. And then the aha was, they need support now more than ever, because they're all refiguring out their businesses and their organizations. Yep. So for a season, I just moved into, what can I do for free? How can I support leaders? And I just went into not that everything had to be free, but I was willing to do whatever I could to just stay on leaders' minds. So I began doing just different online things, just trying to keep leaders connected and engaged. And so that was relatively short-lived. As soon as I could start traveling again, I picked that back up. However, my cohort work did not pick up right away. And so then I moved everything online, which again worked pretty well for that kind of second phase of business. And then what I would say now is this more recent era is we're experimenting again. I think one of the things I'm hearing from a lot of my coaches is we're kind of in a trust deficit as a society, that people are not as quick to trust. They're a little more skeptical because we did market to all of them online for many years, that there's more reservation and skepticism. And what I'm seeing is the time to commit takes longer. Like the sales timeline is extended. People are a little slower to make decisions. They're a little more careful with their resources. And so what we're finding in this era of our work is high connection again, a lot of care, a lot of personal touch, and the expectation that they're just slower in their decision making. And we've got to just be patient to kind of nurture them into a relationship. So we're building trust with people. So those are a few things. I don't know if I quite hit your question exactly on the head, but that's what I'm wrestling with right now.
Besides the trust deficit, what's the emergence of AI and AI tools doing to your business?
That's a great question. What it is doing to our business is, I think it's making it a little harder to cut through the noise from people are skeptical of, is that AI generated or is that you? You're starting to hear some of that. We're even trying to figure out where to use it intentionally, but also make sure it's not replacing our voice and authenticity, as like, so in our writing and our marketing efforts and so forth, is like, use it as a tool, but make sure our thought is still clear and true. I am not finding my clients replacing their work with, like their work with us. They're not replacing that yet. I'm sure that's probably happening in some places, but those are the things that come to mind. We're wrestling more with where and how should we use it. I don't feel like it's disrupted us, but we're trying to make sure we're not missing how to leverage it effectively.
Got it. So, current composition at the firm. There's you.
Yeah.
Who else?
So we have 5 other coaches or consultants that work with clients. They all have varying degrees of, some of them have full-time jobs and they just do this as a side project. And then a couple of them, this is what they do full-time if we have, enough work for them. So that all varies. They all, and then I have another person on the team who kind of helps me with more of the administration side. She's kind of more of a high level admin, doing a lot of the systems, processes, and then some administrative work. And then I have a marketing and growth strategist who's helping us with all of our marketing efforts and then making sure we're connecting with clients and lead generation.
Got it.
And then we contract like design and video and all that fun stuff.
Got it. So the core team, it sounded like it's a mix of full-time and part-time.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Augmented by contractors.
That's right. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yeah. So I would say we have 3 full-time and then everybody else is part-time. It's about how that works out.
Got it. And you're busy. You've got 3 books out. You've got speaking engagements. You run a podcast. So how do you divide your time? And what of those efforts? I counted 300 plus podcasts. You've got 3 books published. You've got speaking engagements. How do you kind of divvy up your time? What's most important? What's getting your message out there? What's bringing in new work?
Yeah. We find for us that speaking is our best lead generation when I'm speaking. So we focus on me speaking at conferences and events. Like if we can get me out in front of potential clients and audience, that's our best lead generation. And I love it. I actually some leaders, that is great because like myself, you love it. Some leaders, you're like, I do not want to do that. So I'm not recommending that everybody this is the right pathway for everybody, but it works very well for us. So we try to prioritize my time for speaking. That also means, and that's different platforms. So that is speaking on conferences and stages, but it is also podcasting, both hosting my own and being a guest on others' podcasts. That's it's just great opportunity for me to be sharing what I do, why we do it, etc. So we prioritize those 2 pieces. We prioritize content development because I am a content creator. And so I will tell you that it was when I launched Foresight, I had just finished my previous book. It took me almost 9 years to get the next book out.
Oh, wow.
I waited way too long. I think it was 8 years, technically. I waited way too long in between books. I was launching a business. I was trying to figure all of that out, but books are a very big lever for speaking events. And so that, the engine kind of all works together. So I need margin and space for writing. So that's a big thing. And, I'm writing podcasts. I'm writing because I don't do all interviews. I do a mix of interviews and solo podcasts. Yes. Yeah. And then we recently launched a network, which is part of our sales and marketing strategy, is a network, which is a very easy entry for people. But I do live trainings in that once a month. So that's another place where I'm live teaching. So content creation. So speaking, content creation, I do 1 or 2 major clients a year. And part of that is sometimes your big clients, they want to work with the principal. That's part of it. But it also keeps me connected to the work. So I feel like I have to be a practitioner to some level. So I usually take 1 or 2 major clients a year. I'll have another team member kind of support me in that so that I'm staying on top of it. So that's kind of the priority order for me. It doesn't mean that my calendar can be a total train wreck. The spring and the fall are busy travel seasons. So if I'm traveling, it's like, I have to sit down with my marketing girl and we look at that calendar for all of the podcasts and like, do we have an actual episode recorded? Like it gets real tactical in a hurry. So
Sure. You mentioned the network a moment ago. How old is it? How popular is it? And is it a paid model or something else?
Yeah, great question. It's brand new. It's a month old. So this is a new experiment, I guess, for us.
Sure.
So basically, here's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a place where culture champions can find one another. What we were finding is that our clients, usually there's one person in an organization who, whether it's their job title or not, they wake up worried about their team. Like they have that orientation. So we wanted to create a place where they could find their people. So it's a paid model. It's very low cost with the intention of building that trust that we talked about earlier, of putting them in a place where they're getting monthly live training, a monthly live Q&A with our coaches. Our courses and resources are available to them. For right now, the founding member price is $49 a month. So we wanted it to be a very easy, I don't have to go get budget approval for this. I can just say, yes, I want to be a part of that.
Sure.
So TBD, I literally was I'm being really honest. I was on a call with my marketing girl earlier today and we're like, I don't know if we have momentum yet. We have people in it. Like we're a month in and we're experimenting with what is helpful to them, what is not helpful to them. What are they interested in? What are they not interested in? So we're going to give it all of 2026 to see what it produces. I'm not discouraged, but I also am looking for, where's the momentum? Where am I seeing positive movement in this?
Got it. And how are you driving growth for the network?
Oh, great question. So you mentioned earlier before we started the recording, I'm doing a training this coming week. And it's those free trainings are kind of entry points. So we'll do a full pitch around the network. We'll do a lot of follow-up after that. So we're using a lot of live trainings to be kind of an introduction to the network.
Got it. And that thing that I mentioned is on November 6th, you're doing a live training, the cost of disengagement and why culture is your most valuable investment in 2026.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're referring to.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's it. Yep.
I stumbled on the ad as I was prepping for this podcast. All right, very terrific. Good. Jenni, what have I forgotten to ask you about? There were a few things we were talking about beforehand. We're running low on time, so I just want to one final thought. Anything that you'd like to share with others that are on a similar journey or looking to learn from some of your successes?
Yeah.
Anything you want to brag about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thanks for your work to you, Craig, and then to all the folks that are listening, that this work matters. Getting to serve leaders, serve teams, help build healthy cultures, help organizations and teams be thriving it is meaningful and it is significant work. And I love that you're wrestling with how is AI impacting our work. I think that's a really important conversation. And I think that our human-centered approach, leaders like you and I think is a huge asset to every organization and every leader we serve. So I would just say keep leading well, because your work and your effort matters. It's taking a lot of stretching and it's probably challenging you because I feel like we're in a era where a lot of things are shifting and changing, and it's causing us to have to get creative and find new ways, but keep focused on that mission and that core of what you feel called to. So I just want to encourage everybody, you're doing great work. Stay the course. People are the point, and we need more culture champions out there. So I just appreciate, Craig, what you're doing in helping us connect with one another and connect with great leaders in this space. And I'm just grateful for all the leaders that are being intentional to steward their influence well. So thank you all.
Wonderful message to close on. So Jenni, if anybody's heard anything today that resonated with them, or they'd like to get in touch with you or learn more, what are the best ways you'd like them to get in touch? And by the way, I've got your email and I've got your website, so you don't have to spell those out.
Perfect.
But how do you like to be contacted?
Yeah, easy, simple as getforesight.com is our website. So just hop on the website. There's places, all kinds of resources and things to check out. But you can also just send a form in that way. Or on social media, I'm at Jenni Catron, and I read my social media messages and things. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. You can find me there. I'd love to connect.
Terrific. And Get Foresight is with the number 4.
That's right.
Get Foresight. Terrific. That sounds good.
That's great.
All right, Jenni, have a great day.
Thank you.